Good morning.
Good morning, sunshine.
I take my video off, but I look like a troll.
Hello, look at me. Like it
You
doesn't matter.
look gorgeous.
You look fine, don't worry.
Okay, well, I'm gonna take my video off, but I'm just warning you, I look like a troll. I'm not ready for the day yet.
You're
So,
fine, I promise you.
okay, here we go. I'm
Here she
sorry.
goes.
It's worse than I even thought.
Oh my god, you have a hat on. Stop it.
I have to. And I have this. Yeah, I gotta go back off video. That's too bad.
You're so silly.
Sorry.
You're so vain.
No.
Probably think this song is about
You have a
you.
good voice.
Y'all don't worry, this is why I'm not a singer. Thanks for joining me today. I'm so sorry. I owe you guys an apology for last week. What a for lack of a better word, a shit show last week. So I'm grateful that you guys came back to me. I think this is a super important conversation. I was really looking forward to last week, and I really thought I was going to be finished showing property on time so that I could get to you guys and be seated and ready because I prepared for this class already a week in advance, and it just did not work out that way. And I still had two houses to show at 1 o'clock last week, or 12 o'clock last week this time. So here we are. We are back at it again. This week's conversation is the dreaded, I call it dreaded because a lot of agents are avoiding this conversation, but it is the dreaded compensation conversation. We're going to go look at it from both sides. One, to your sellers, how we can explain to them what is happening, um, but also like to explain their options to them, how to summarize the lawsuit so that it's easily understandable by our clients. I think too that that's also a kind of an issue for some agents right now is they don't understand it themselves, so they're struggling with how to explain it to their clients. And obviously, you need to have a grasp on what actually occurred and what how it impacts the buyers and sellers so that you can, explain it to your clients in a way that's easily understood. And so let me share my screen so you guys can get to my presentation. I did drop in the chat a link to the file for this class. Um, and I will tell you that there's a resource in there for the buyer side and then my presentation from today. So that should be helpful to you. I'm also giving you guys, instead of just telling you my verbiage, I actually wrote it out on my slides. So you guys don't have to record me. I mean, it is recorded, but you guys don't have to write feverishly the words that I'm saying as I say them because it'll actually be on the screen. So first of all, I just got back from Nashville. I had a full week of clients. We juggled four different clients from Thursday to Saturday. So I'm exhausted from that weekend. It was a Labor Day full of labor, for sure. And so I dealt with this conversation all weekend. From the perspective of I had a listing appointment, I did have to go over this whole conversation with my sellers, explaining their options, explaining the lawsuit. But I also worked with two different buyers that I had to explain to them what is happening with the compensation. I had to be the person to reach out to listing agents to ask them if there was any compensation being offered. And then I had to explain those options to my client when getting them to sign the buyer's agency agreement, one of which I already knew and I had a relationship with. The other one was a stranger. And so that was a harder conversation to have. But we're going to go through all these scenarios. I'm going to explain to you kind of how I navigated it. I want to give you guys some suggestions on best practices of how you can navigate it moving forward. What I am going to tell you guys is that we need to act with a little decorum and professionalism. And I know that goes without saying, and some of you are laughing at me like, yeah, duh, of course I do. But what I'm telling you is that this is already hard. This is already challenging for some agents out there. It's very challenging. And they are just doing what their clients are asking them to do by asking you what the compensation is. And I did allude to this last week. Don't be rude. There's no reason for you to be rude to cooperating agents about compensation. There's no reason for you to have an attitude when someone asks you about compensation. That is our duty and our responsibility to our clients, especially if your buyer broker agreement is written in a way that says that you're only authorized to show houses that are offering compensation. And some of your buyers may say that to you. So just understand that I want you guys to be armed and equipped with language on how to combat some nasty agents, because you're going to get some. I want you to treat cooperating agents with respect and professionalism. I want you to maintain your composure and calmness and make sure that you keep your emotions out of it when you're advocating for your paycheck and for your client, for the compensation that your client might not be able to afford, and you need the seller to pay it. You're going to get more with, as my mama used to say, you attract more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. So let's drop the egos. Let's drop all of the attitude towards other agents. There are a lot of idiots out there running around that have no idea what this lawsuit was about. They are very annoyed every time a buyer's agent calls them to ask about compensation. They're rude and they say, just add it to your offer. Well, I have more questions than that, and we're going to dive into that. But I just wanted to preface this whole conversation with, we are working together collaboratively with each other. It will take both of us talking to each other professionally to really figure out what options the seller has selected. And I really need to put my thinking cap on about how I can best represent my buyer, and what questions to ask so that I can give them proper advice. Okay. So I just want to start the conversation with that. So, first of all, let's give a brief overview very quickly here to how to explain the lawsuit to sellers to begin with. I'm going to advise you guys to use simple, clear language when explaining the lawsuit, and I have some examples for you. I want you to reassure the sellers that their best interests are being protected. I always start this conversation with, what do you know about the lawsuit so far? What have you heard? There's a lot of misinformation out there. I got the gambit this weekend from a seller who said, oh, I don't have to pay compensation at all, to nothing really has changed. It's the same as usual, to I only want to see houses where the seller is offering compensation. So you're going to run the gambit of all three of these situations. And I want to make sure that your clients understand, do you think they care about how we get paid, y'all? Do you think that's the first thing that they're thinking about in this whole conversation with them? Like, this is the thing, is it's important to us. We don't want to work for free. But your clients really, at the end of the day, out of all the things that they're worried about and stressed about, your paycheck is not one of them. Okay. So keep that in mind. It's important to you, yes. And you should get paid for your work. But I want you to understand, they're not thinking about this the way that we are. They're not so focused on this. They don't even know a lot about it, because that at the end of the day, this is not what is most important to them. Okay? So I want you to understand that it is our responsibility to reiterate to them that their best interests are the most important thing. Their goals are more important than my paycheck. I do want you to discuss the options that sellers have regarding compensation. You need to be able to explain to the sellers that they have different options that they can pursue in offering agent compensation. I want to walk you through how to present these options to them without steering the conversation or telling them what you would prefer them to do, but giving them their options and letting them make an informed decision about how best to proceed. And then I want you guys to feel comfortable being armed with how to address the common questions or concerns that sellers might have. Let's get into it. I want you to start by explaining how the recent changes might alter the traditional practices. I want you to make sure that your seller understands that they actually have more flexibility now than they did in the past. Everybody wants to approach this with a negative context, with a negative lens, like what is bad about these changes. And my advice to you is highlight what's good about this lawsuit to your sellers. You now have more flexibility than you did before. And before, the way that it worked is we came in and charged you a flat fee. And of that flat fee, we, the listing brokerage, determined how much we were going to pay the buyer's agency. And now I want them to understand that they actually are empowered now and they have the flexibility to choose what compensation, if any, they offer to buyer's agents. Let's begin with the basics. I want you to start by acknowledging that there has been a significant legal development. And so, how I would say that, again, I always start the conversation with tell me what you know already about this lawsuit. They might say, I don't know anything. This is the first I've heard of it. I heard that a couple of times over the last month too, is that, oh, I don't know anything. They might say, oh, I heard that some things have changed. I heard that I don't have to pay buyer's compensation anymore. But the way that I would recommend that you summarize it is by saying there was a major lawsuit involving the National Association of Realtors and some very large real estate brokerage firms. The lawsuit has led to a settlement, which is now reflecting in changes about how real estate agents are paid, particularly the way that we pay buyer's agents. And I would just explain in the past, we used to have a flat fee that I charged you, and of that flat fee, I determined how much I was going to offer to the other side. Typically, we would split it halfway down the middle, but that wasn't always the case. I know I have seen settlement statements where the listing agent actually took 4 apples and I only got 2 instead of 3 and 3. So there was no rhyme or reason or standard that people got paid. And so what we want to do is just explain to them the way it used to be and what they need to know now. And so I want you to simplify the terms and focus on the core issue of the lawsuit. The core issue of the lawsuit is that the lawsuit claimed that the way agents have been paid traditionally, specifically how we shared compensation, was not really transparent to home sellers like you. You didn't have a choice of how much I offered to the other agent. I just told you what my fee was and how much I was willing to pay the other agent. And typically you agreed to that. But now that this lawsuit has come about and there's been a settlement, we're just approaching it a different way. And we're making sure that home sellers like you understand that they actually have options and that they maintain the decision about how much to offer. I want you to discuss the outcome of the lawsuit and what it means for the seller. So again, I would continue to explain that the court agreed that changes were needed, that there were some people that thought the practice was unfair and that they were not aware that they were paying buyer's agents commissions. And then as a result, we now have more flexibility in how agents are compensated. And that means you as the seller have more control over what you pay to the buyer's agent. Let me check in with you guys real quick and pause here. Does this sound uncomfortable to anybody the way that I've summarized it thus far? Does that sound pretty easy for you to say?
Yes,
Yeah,
it
we
sounds
can all
great.
agree, right? Like I see a couple heads shaking. This is pretty easy to summarize if you say, there were a lawsuit based on how we paid people, how agents got paid. We reached a settlement, and now there's more flexibility for you as a seller. That sounds much better to me as a seller without bombarding me with all the ins and outs of the lawsuit. And it also makes it sound like, well, for me as the seller, this is a favorable change, right? Everyone is approaching this as the negative thing. It's like, what's going to happen? If you don't offer compensation, we won't be able to sell your house, or your property values are going to be impacted because some will and some won't, and all the negative things that could go with it. Focus on the facts, y'all. The facts are that this lawsuit was kind of needed. There was not transparency, and people had problems with that. As a seller, we want them to be armed with their options and make the best decision for them based on the outcome that they want. Okay. So I want you just to be dumb this, and I don't mean to say dumb it down because that makes it sound like I'm being condescending. I don't mean dumb it down, but make it as simple as you possibly can in terms that are easy for them to understand and focus on the positives, not the negatives. Okay. So everybody's on board with me so far. Yeah. Okay. Next, what this means for sellers. So I want you to highlight these changes that impact their options in a positive way. So going forward, you will have more options to decide how much, if anything, you want to offer to the buyer's agent. This gives you more control over the costs and the overall selling process, which is what I just said. I want you to emphasize your role as their advocate. One of the things that I'm going to be very good at saying to all of my sellers is I want you to have all of the information and make the most informed decision based on your goals and needs, right? As we get into more and more properties where the seller might be having financial struggles, where the sellers may have overpaid for the property during 2020 or 2021, and now they are kind of upside down if prices have come down somewhere, you're going to have more empathy and more flexibility with your sellers. And you're also going to have to make sure that they know that it is their decision ultimately if they offer a compensation. All we can do is guide them through the changes and guide them through the options and help them make the best decision for them. Okay. Everybody with me there? Um, so you've got more flexibility. You can save money now if you choose to, and it allows you to control more of the transaction. I want you to share a clear strategy and how you plan to navigate these changes while meeting your seller's objectives or goals. So, for example, I might say to the seller, we're going to review the current market. We're going to decide on a strategy that balances your goals with the need to attract buyers. Because again, we want them to understand our job is to make the greatest first impression. Our job is also to attract the maximum number of eyeballs on the property as we can. And so, in your explanation to the seller, I want you to share with them, and this is where you need to be very careful about the language that you use. I want you to share with them their options and give them the pros and cons of each option, but be careful to explain that ultimately it is their decision. I want to warn you guys about using phrases and terms like, if you don't pay a buyer's agent, you will not sell your house. If you do not offer a compensation, we might struggle to get the right buyer. You can share the pro and con in a way that says more like, I want you to have flexibility. Um, I want you to make your decisions based on data, not on my feelings and not on based on my experience. I want you to make it based on data. The data that you're going to compile for them is in my MLS, I still can see whether or not sellers are paying compensation in some way, shape, or form, some concession to the buyer. You can always ask the listing agent, hey, your transaction that closed last week, can you give me some information about it so that I can prepare my seller who's getting ready to go on the market this week? And ask them, did they pay buyer's agent compensation and how much? If you've gathered all this information from the last 6 or 7 sales that have happened in the neighborhood, you now have data that you can go to that seller and say, of the 6, all 6 paid a buyer's agent compensation of at least 2.5 apples or whatever number of apples you are counting, right? If you don't ask that, your advice is very vague. How does a seller know what other people are doing? How does a seller know what is right for them? I need you to make sure that they understand, but I want you to be very cautious about using words that could be seen as steering people to paying something when they didn't feel like they had to, right? That's where this lawsuit came from to begin with. We need to be transparent, but we need to offer them options. We need to explain them the pros and cons and let them decide for themselves how they want to go about it. But they are relying on us to provide them with data so that they can make an informed decision. If you don't have that data in your MLS where you can see what compensation was offered or what kind of concession was paid. So for example, I pulled up an FHA listing where the seller paid $23,000 in concessions. I can tell on the sales price that that was not just closing costs. It had to also have been compensation for the agent in some way, shape, or form, because I know FHA contributions of the seller are capped at a certain amount. So I can do the math. But you need to gather the data so that your seller makes an informed decision. Is everybody with me there? Okay. All right. I want you to outline your strategy to protect them and to protect their interests. And so what I'm saying is I'm going to review the data. I'm going to give you the information based on what has happened in your zip code, in your school zone, in your neighborhood, whatever data points you're choosing, and offer them more information so they can make a more informed decision, not just based on, I really am fearful that you won't sell your house or fearful that we won't get as much attention or as many showings or something like that. I want you to give real world examples or scenarios. So use examples from your experience or hypothetical scenarios that show how successfully you've navigated this previously. So, for instance, I recently worked with a seller who was concerned about offering a lower buyer agent commission. So, for example, maybe that seller offered 2 apples instead of 3 apples. Obviously, when we decided to do that, the seller was worried that that difference of what may have been perceived as normal or common or what the agent wanted, we were offering a little less than that. They were worried. But what I did was made sure that they understood that we had a very thorough marketing plan that would ensure they had maximum eyeballs on it, and that I was going to go a step further to help negotiate a great offer for them where we could work that extra amount into the deal if we needed to. And it really has to do with how you present it to the buyer's agent, which I'm going to get to in a minute. In the end, I want you to tell examples. I've had 3 other sellers this month that are willing to pay the buyer's agent compensation. I had 2 that were not, and we just worked it into the deal. I want you to make sure that you understand you're asking people in your office, you're asking people, your coaches, your mentors, whoever, give me some examples. If you have not seen any contracts yourself where people have negotiated, ask for examples about how people have done it in your state. What are they seeing? I've seen it done 6 or 7 different ways in Tennessee already, just in the short period of time we've been navigating. So I'm giving them examples about the different ways that they have done it. So let's explain some of the options that the sellers have. Obviously, option number 1, you can offer, and please be careful with using this word. I almost took it off the slide to begin with, which is offer standard buyer agent compensation. We all know there is no standard. Okay. So I actually need to edit this slide altogether and take off the word standard. There is no standard. So, but you can see in your marketplace what the data tells you the last 25 sellers have offered a certain amount. That may be what's considered standard, but don't use the word standard in your marketplace, please. You may say option number 1 is to offer buyer agent compensation of a certain amount. Don't use the word standard. Everybody with me there? Option number 2 is to offer a reduced or no buyer agent compensation. And that just means that you're going to discuss with the seller the possibility of offering 1.5 apples or 2 apples. Or maybe you're not offering anything up front. You're going to tell the agents that if they want compensation, they will need to make it part of their offer, which is also what I saw a lot of this weekend, which I'll explain in a second. Explain that this could reduce the number of agents willing to show the property, but it might appeal to sellers who are looking to save on costs. So you want to give them the pros and cons, but you also want to let them know that any agent who's worth their salt is going to negotiate their fee as part of the offer, and you should expect that. I think having a preliminary conversation before the house ever goes on the market is going to walk your clients through their options. It's going to allow them to see the data to choose what best option is for them. But ultimately, your negotiation skills are going to determine what this looks like. So option 3 would be offer buyer agent compensation based on specific conditions. So your seller might say to you, you can advertise that we are offering compensation for an acceptable offer, or for an offer within a certain time frame, or a certain offer that meets their criteria, like closing in a certain title company or using a certain lender, or just like your builders do where they offer compensation or concessions. If you use their title company, they'll pay title, or if you use their lender, they offer you a credit or something like that. You can also do things that are based on certain specific conditions. Okay. Any questions real quick before I move on to the next one? Like Randy said, typical instead of standard. Typical to me still indicates that there's some kind of acceptable amount that it should be, and I want us to stay away from words like that. Maybe you can use the last 12 sales in your neighborhood had a compensation of
Laura,
X,
you're frozen.
and maybe that's what we use instead. But using words like standard or typical, I want you guys to be very careful about those things, because I think that's what got us into trouble to begin with, is people were using language that made sellers feel like they had to. And what we want them to know is that they actually have they have the control and flexibility now that they didn't have before. For each option that you give them, obviously a full compensation, a partial or no, or contingent upon certain things, you want to go over the advantages and disadvantages of each one for them. A standard, and again, I don't like this word, the standard compensation offer might lead to more showings, whereas a reduced one might limit the pool of buyers or save on costs. But at what cost? Is it going to take you longer to sell it? You remember, you really want to go back to your client's motivation for selling. This is why it's really important too that you ask your seller, like, what is most important to you? If you were to put a white picket fence scenario of what this would look like, tell me what that would look like. Your house would go on the market on this day. It would be under contract in this amount of time. The buyer would, qualify for their loan smooth sailing. We would have minimal repairs. The appraisal would come back perfectly. Everything happened in escrow the way it was supposed to, and we closed on time, and I got my money. That's a white picket fence. You might want to throw some speed bumps in there and say, okay, well, what would be still a win for you if any of these things happen? Would that make you feel like you didn't win? And that's where you start building in some of these options that they have. So if you could get all that and pay the buyer's agent compensation, would that be worth it to you to pay that fee if it meant that you closed on time and you got to move to your new state in the time frame that you wanted? Or if you didn't have to pay 3 more months mortgage because your house sat on the market for 90 days because you were trying to save money on compensation and buyers can't afford it in your market. You want to go over these pros and cons and advantages and disadvantages to them so that you can help them decide. And that's where you highlight, you told me that selling this as fast as possible was most important to you. That means our condition has to be perfect, our price has to be perfect, and we can help sell it faster by offering maybe some compensation. We also might offer some concession. I want to make a comment real quick about concessions because in my market, in every market I've sold in, and in my experience in 25 years and selling in 4 states, most listings that offer some type of bonus structure, some type of bonus to the selling agent for bringing an offer by a certain date, or if you buy this house, you get free tacos for a year, or if you buy this house, it comes with a Lotus or whatever those incentives are. I will tell you that in my experience, most of them are not effective. Most buyers want to see whatever concession you're offering, they want to use that however they want to. And so even they would rather see it reflected in the price reduction than given as a credit. Although right now where the rates are sitting and they've come down quite a bit, it's a little bit more it's a little bit more acceptable for some buyers and they're not necessarily needing that money to buy down the rate as much as they did when the rates were in the eights and nines, but still they would probably rather have that credit either off the price or to use to buy down the rate than just have it as a bonus to the agent, right? Remember, your clients don't care that you got a $5,000 bonus for selling 5 houses in one subdivision in a new construction development. They don't care that the builder sent you on a trip to Vegas, but they should know about it. If you're selling another house in that neighborhood earns you an additional compensation or a trip somewhere or a free Yeti cooler or whatever you're being enticed with to drive your traffic to that subdivision, your buyer needs to be made aware of it. And that's the kind of transparency that we're looking to gain with this. Okay. Do want to remind you of any legal obligations and ethical considerations that you need to be aware of. You want to emphasize transparency and clear communication for a smooth transaction. You also want to review and remind yourself of what the code of ethics says. There are lots of agents out there right now that are violating the code of ethics left and right by asking me to take a reduction in my compensation to make a deal work. I want to remind you that your realtor code of ethics actually talks about that, and it is a violation to ask an agent to take a reduced compensation. You can offer it, but another agent cannot ask you to take a reduction without violating the code of ethics. So I'm going to advise you guys to remind yourself what the code of ethics says and reread it and make sure that you're not violating that in an attempt to try to understand this whole compensation conversation. Okay. All right. I do want you to address potential concerns up front. I want you to acknowledge their common fears or provide reassurances. So some of the things that I might say would be that I understand that you're worried about offering a lower commission, that could discourage some buyer's agents. That is a valid concern. Let's weigh that against your priorities, like your bottom line. If we only have a little margin and we don't have a lot of money to work with, we might need that money that's set aside for commission. We might need that for repairs. We might need that for some type of bridge on the appraisal gap. We don't know. But that bucket of money that we're kind of setting aside for compensation, we need to have options because we may need to use that a different way and renegotiate the whole deal. I want your clients to understand that you can empathize with them, that you understand what their worries are and concerns, but you also need to reassure them that you're on their team. I do want you to highlight the importance of transparency. Reassure them that transparency is going to be throughout the process, throughout this entire transaction. I'm going to keep you fully informed about how your decisions might impact your sale. Let's say that your seller in the beginning of the conversation doesn't want to offer any compensation because he heard he doesn't have to. Okay, you're on board with that because that's his decision, right? You get 45 days into the listing and you haven't had a single showing because every agent that calls you and says, are you offering compensation? And your answer is no, we're not. You need to make it part of your offer. Most of these agents are not skilled and equipped on how to do this, so that they just won't show your house. Maybe you have to go back to your seller now and say, this isn't working the way that you thought it would. You told me the most important thing to you was that you had to be in your new home in Colorado by the end of the month. The only way that I think we can make that happen is we need to change some things. Maybe you change your marketing plan. Maybe you add compensation. Maybe you do a hybrid and you offer some compensation. But I need you to highlight the importance that whatever decision they make, if you start to see that things are not working the way that you thought they would, that you're going to advise them on some options that they can change. Okay. I want you to reiterate your commitment to them. I want you to conclude by reinforcing your commitment to their success. Ultimately, my goal is to get you the highest dollar, to get you the best possible outcome. These changes give us new tools to work with, and together we're going to find the right approach. What's most important to that seller? Netting the most amount of money or the faster sale? Cleaner terms, or maybe working with an agent that you know is going to has systems and processes, that is super professional, that you know that their clients are getting good advice. I'm happy to compensate that cooperating agent all day. If I've got another agent who can't even draft an offer, who can't even use showing time, who doesn't have access to a lockbox key, who clearly cannot fill out contracts, I'm really not going to be as excited to work with that person. And maybe I don't pay that person as much because they haven't shown me their value. Maybe they haven't shown the seller that value, right? But I want you to understand that I want you to talk in terms of why this is good for your seller. Don't just focus on the bad stuff, and don't just focus on you have to pay a compensation in order to get showing. I showed a lot of houses this weekend that the agents told me we are offering compensation, but I'm not telling you how much. How's that transparent? Right? I got to submit 5 offers to find out how much you're offering. That's not fair either. And that's not fair to the buyers. So I'm not encouraging you to respond that way. So let's talk about how we're going to handle this conversation with the buyer's agents, because this is where I got pissed and I decided we needed to have this conversation to begin with. Because I saw on so many Facebook groups that I'm in, these agents were posting about how angry and irritated they were that buyer's agents were calling them nonstop, asking about compensation on their listings. Well, I know as a buyer's agent, I don't really have to call you and ask you. I'm just going to write it as part of the offer and let you respond to it. But what if I'm in a multiple offer situation? I don't get a chance to let you respond because based on the way that I wrote the offer, my offer might not net the seller the most amount, and maybe my client loses. So waiting until it's part of the offer may not be what's best for your client. Some of your buyers clients are going to advise you, I'm instructing you to find out if they're paying any compensation before you show me the house because I can't afford to pay you myself. And so you're going to have to call some of these agents and you're going to have to explain to them, I've been instructed by my buyers to find out if there is compensation being offered before I show your property. Some of these agents are going to be nasty, y'all. It's ugly. Some of them are not going to be nice to you. They're going to not answer you. They're not going to return your text. They're not going to return your call because, they don't use their phone for that. But I'm going to tell you that you've got to be very clear with your conversation with them and say, I have been instructed by my client to try to find out what compensation is being offered in advance of our showing. Right? So I do have some language here. So some of the things we're going to talk about are common scenarios. And then I'm giving you guys some scripted responses. So first of all, let's say you should have a standard script or set of talking points ready. So if you are the listing agent, I want you to be prepared to answer some of these buyer's agents that are going to call you and text you. And they're going to say, are you offering any compensation? I want you to have a standard script that you're going to say. For example, the compensation offered to the buyer's agent is 2 apples. If you have any questions or concerns, I'm happy to discuss them. The compensation that the seller has decided to offer is 2.5 apples. If you have any questions about that or concerns, let me know. Have it already planned out what you're going to say to these agents. Or have a way, there's a lot of agents out there who are big listing specialists who are putting it all on a spreadsheet and putting that spreadsheet on their website. So people can just look up. They don't have to call me to find out what the percentage is being offered or what amount is being offered. They can go straight to my website and find out because we're allowed to market it there, right? But you need to have a standard set that you say that is based on what your seller has authorized you to say. If the seller has decided to offer a lower amount than what you think they should offer, or a conditional commission, explain it in a very straightforward manner. The seller has chosen to offer 1 apple as compensation to their buyer's agent. This decision reflects their current priorities in the sale. Obviously, that tells me the seller wants to net as much money as possible, and the seller does not see the value in the buyer's agent. So again, when I present my offer, one of the things that I want to do is highlight what I bring to the table. I want that seller to understand that I'm a 25-year veteran. I'm a second generation realtor. I have owned 2 firms. I'm a national coach that coaches agents all over the country, right? I have operated in 4 states. I have sold thousands of homes. I am very system and process driven. So that means that I have processes that my clients go through that nothing slips through the cracks, right? I want them to know that my buyer client is getting properly advised about how to navigate things, that I know what the contract says, like the forwards and backwards of my hand. I want them to know that they're not dealing with a fly-by-night agent that just got a license yesterday. They are dealing with a seasoned professional who knows what they're doing, and I want that to have some value. I want them to understand that I've walked my buyer through the expectations of what we're looking for in a home. I've walked them through what to expect with a home inspection and what kind of things we're looking for, what kind of things we're not looking for, right? I've kept them focused on big ticket items that cost a lot of money, not trivial things like a switch plate or a torn screen or cosmetic things. So if I have a seller that is telling me that they only want to offer me 1 apple, I am going to present my offer with also presenting my value so that they understand that I am bringing them a ready, willing, and able and qualified and educated client that is going to make this transaction smoother. And that might hold some weight for that seller. I want you to remain professional and neutral. Y'all, some agents that we work with out here in these streets are like a pit bull on a bone. They will fight for their client just to get a win. And that win might be over something trivial like a second garage door remote instead of just 1. But they are going to fight you to get that second remote because that's how they operate. And again, you're going to catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. I want you guys to avoid being defensive or argumentative. I want you to avoid being emotional. Remember, our clients are relying on us to remain level headed. They're relying on us to maintain our professionalism. They already think we're a joke. So when you get unglued over the smallest little thing, what is that going to say when you become unglued over you not getting paid? You're going to show yourself. And I promise you, it's not going to be the way you want people to see you. When you start putting your paycheck over the interests of your clients, you've already lost. Yes, you need to be paid. And you are going to get paid if you are smart and figure out how to make this work. You're going to get paid. But when your pay becomes more important than the buyer getting the home that they want, we've got a problem. And that means you don't have your thinking cap on to figure out how to make it work. I do want you to provide justification if necessary. So if you are the listing agent and if you're pressed by a buyer's agent, like why are they only offering one apple or why are they only offering $2,500? I want you to say things like the seller considered several factors. I presented all options to the seller. I gave them the pros and cons of what each decision would and how it would impact them. We looked at current market conditions and their financial goals in determining the decision that they made. Stick up for your sellers, y'all. Don't throw your sellers under the bus and say, I tried. I tried to get them to pay compensation and they just wouldn't. Now that looks like you are against your seller and you're not on the same team. And if I'm the other agent, I'm going to leverage that and I'm going to use that little opening to work my way in to try to get what I want. You got to remember who you represent here and who do you owe loyalty to. Your loyalty is to your client. So don't badmouth your client to the other agent and say, oh, they're cheap. They don't want to pay your fee. I tried to talk them into it, but they said no. They just want to get as much money as possible. You need to be creative and let them know they considered all the options based on their goals and their current financial situation. They've decided to offer X. And then you need to be cooperative and collaborative with the other agent to figure out how can you make this work. If the buyer has no money and the seller doesn't want to offer any, is there a way that you can bump up the price? Can they finance it? Is there anywhere else that the money can come from? Can you forego other concessions? There's other ways to do this, y'all, than you just giving up your money. If a buyer insists on a higher commission, I want you to be firm but polite. Reiterate the seller's decision and suggest that they present their offer. I understand you. So I had an agent arguing with me this weekend, right? They wanted 3 apples and we were offering 2.5 apples. Well, I'm going to write my offer for 3 apples. By all means, please write your offer however you would like it to be presented. And make sure that the buyer understands that you're making that part of their offer. If we're in a multiple offer situation, you may not get a chance to revisit the conversation. You may not get the opportunity to go back and renegotiate your fees. You get one chance to submit your best offer. You need to make sure that your clients understand that. But I would say to the buyer's agent, we welcome you to include your compensation request in any offer that you submit. This is the other issue that comes with asking in advance about compensation. I don't even want to talk to you about compensation truly until I have an offer in my hand. How do I know right off the bat? I'm not going to tell a buyer's agent we're offering 3 apples if the offer is 70% below list price or 30% below list price, whatever the numbers are. I would tell them put it as part of your offer and present it, and I will present it to the seller for their consideration. Everything that the buyer asks for always affects the net of the seller in some way, shape, or form, whether that's time, whether that's a warranty, whether it's leaving behind the washer and dryer, whether it's, the patio furniture, if it is, repairs, all those things affect the seller's net. So we have lots of ways that we can look at this. I do want you to clarify any misunderstandings that you might have. So repeat the terms if necessary and document the conversation to ensure that everything is clear and transparent. This is where your compensation agreements and You are better off using very clear language. If you're asking for a concession to be paid for as your compensation, that's not written the same as concessions for my buyers. So for example, for some of you that are like looking at me like I got three heads, if I want my compensation paid, I work at Epic Realty. I'm going to write in my contract that the seller is to pay Epic Realty a certain dollar amount upon closing to be used as buyer's agent compensation. If I want, a concession for my buyer client, as in closing costs, I'm going to write that differently. That's going to be that the seller is to pay or to give the credit to the buyer upon settlement for closing costs, prepaids, or points. And I'm going to be very specific. Does that include title or not title or any other term that the seller usually pays for? Be crystal clear. I don't want you to send things over where someone says, well, does this include title? You should have it so clear that there's no question. Okay, you cannot be ambiguous with real estate contracts. Ensure that there's no misunderstandings, document everything. And then be mindful of your legal and ethical boundaries. Make sure that you're not misrepresenting or misleading anyone. Make sure you're acting within the guidelines of our code of ethics. Questions about any of that or comments that you guys might have, because I know some of you are dealing with the same thing that I am in terms of getting pushback from some agents who don't want to have the conversation, but also what do we do when a seller says, oh, now I don't have to pay more, right? Do you guys feel comfortable with presenting these things to your clients? Do you have comments that you want to make about examples of things that you've already run into with agents about this where things have been different? Let me hear from y'all. What are you seeing or hearing or thinking? Y'all don't talk all at once, okay?
I have a quick question. Are we also discussing the conversations that buyers agents are having with our buyers today or no?
Yes, that's coming
Okay.
at you right now.
Okay, perfect. I was just I'm trying to connect all of the dots.
All the dots, you got this. So
Thank
that's where we are now. So I wanted you guys to get, the first part was just, as a listing agent, what do you say, right? Um, and I feel like you guys really need to focus on, as a listing agent, presenting all the options, making sure that they understand that they do have flexibility, that they have more control than they did previously. I want you to explain the pros and cons. I want you to back up your opinion using data. Remember, call the listing agents, send a carrier pigeon, a Harry Potter owl, whatever you need to get this listing agent to answer you in saying, hey, we have to work together out here. And I need to know what happened on this transaction so that I can properly advise my client. I need to be able to tell my sellers what other sellers in the neighborhood have done. And since we don't have that field in the MLS anymore, I don't have access to it. I'm relying on you to tell me, did your seller pay compensation and what did that look like? Right? If I can go to a seller and say, I called every agent of the last 12 sales, here's the data from those 12 sales, or I could get 10 of them to call me back. I still have more informed decision data from 10 people versus just saying, well, I don't know if you're going to sell it if you don't offer compensation. That's not fair. That's not even accurate, right? But you got to do the work. You can't be so lazy that you're afraid to call listing agents and ask questions. I do it all the time on pending transactions, especially if I'm about to take a listing in a neighborhood and I have 3 things that are under contract in my neighborhood that I think are good comps for my sale, right? I have to call that listing agent and say, what can you tell me? Sometimes they will tell me everything, more than they should, right? Then the deal falls apart and I know what they were willing to sell it at, right? Be careful, but I'm saying call them at least, ask. What can you tell me about this transaction that is going to help me give my sellers better advice? Okay. You guys cannot be lazy. And I know I'm not talking to lazy people here because y'all showed up and I know what kind of agents you are, but we're dealing with a lot of lazy people out there. We're dealing with a lot of agents who want to cash big checks for doing the bare minimum work. If you guys want to stand out among sellers, show them you're not like them. Show them that you actually have a plan to get their house sold, that you are knowledgeable, that you are in touch with what's happening in the market. You know what sellers are paying. You can look at the data and see what concessions people are paying, what percentage of list price sellers are getting, you've got to be the expert, y'all. That's what they're relying on you for. Okay. Let's dive into the buyer side real quick because I want to get to, yes, Randy.
Yeah, the question queen here. I might have missed it because I got a call in between, but when that agent told you that they were not going to share what the compensation that was being offered was, how did you respond? I might have missed it, so I apologize if I did.
No, that's a perfect question. So I actually had several this weekend tell me that. I'm not going to tell you what the compensation is. We are offering some. We've already pre-decided what that amount will be. We don't want to we are not divulging it because there are other agents who have offered less. And that means that my seller might net more money if I don't tell everybody we're offering 3 apples, right? You might submit your offer with 2.5 apples because that's what's acceptable to you. So by telling people on the front end what you're willing to pay might actually not be in the best interest of your seller. Your seller might make more money if you don't, right? But what I responded with is, okay, no problem. I understand you don't want to share an amount with me. All I ask is that if you are in a multiple offer situation that you notify me so that I can best guide my client to the best offer possible, right? Some of them will and some of them won't. And I'll be very honest with you that I've even had agents straight up lie to me straight in my face and tell me, like, oh, don't worry, you'll be the first to know if I get anything on it. And then they get an offer and all of a sudden they forgot my name. They forgot who I am. They forgot we just talked 30 minutes ago, right? So there's no guarantee of that, but a lot of it has to do with the relationships that you build. Are you even building relationships with the agents in your market so that they know that you have a working relationship? You're more likely going to get them to actually talk to you. You're going to get more likely for them to be able to remember to call you if they get another offer. Or you're going to have to give your client both the pros and cons. Hey, if we ask for 3 apples and somebody else submits an offer for 2 apples, I don't want my commission to be what stands in the way of you getting your offer accepted. So maybe I have to write it a different way that tells the seller my fee is 100% negotiable, and that if you like all the other terms of my client's offer except for this, please come back to me and give me an opportunity to remedy that before you accept another offer. If you were the listing agent, wouldn't you call me to at least talk to me about it? You at least want to try, right? Because maybe that helps your seller. Remember who you represent here, y'all. Who do you represent? That is going to dictate what you do. So my advice on the buyer side is going to be, I hope that answered your question, Randy. It was really just about just saying like, hey, I understand you don't want to share with me the amount. I'm going to ask for a certain amount. I don't want this to be the reason. This is just one of 18 terms on this purchase and sale agreement. I am willing to work on my part of my fee if I am willing to do that. I'm going to let the agent know that. Please don't let that be the deciding factor. I would like an opportunity to correct what I'm asking for if we're in the running at all. If all the other terms are acceptable to your seller, I would love the opportunity. You may not get it, but at least you can ask for it. Your chances are much higher that way than if you don't say anything. You just submit your offer. Y'all, when the rates go down more in some of our markets, we're going to see an increase of sales price again. We're going to see more buyers entering the market again. We're going to see more competition. Guess which one is the first thing that people are going to be slicing and dicing? Our fee, right? So you have got to work. And I know you guys have probably heard this said 3,000 times since we started talking about the SNARK settlement. Insert your value, show your value. But what does that mean to you? Do you even know how to tell people why you're worth the money? Right? You need to focus on the problems that I see Teresa kind of going like this with her head, right? I know you're saying something, but I can't hear you. And I don't even see you're muted.
Oh, sorry. I said I need a drink. This is my timing as a newer agent. It's just, ugh,
I hear you. And it's stressful, right? Because you're like, I want to get paid, right? I need to get paid. I've worked really hard. And some of these buyers are going to drag you around for 6 months and you earned every dime of that for 6 months, right? That's why you're going to see retainer fees charged by some people. Some agents are going to start implementing retainer fees just for their time. Because what happens if I show you houses for 6 months. You finally find the house of your dream and the seller's not willing to compensate me and you won't either. Now what? I just wasted 6 months of my life, right? I want you to be confident in knowing though that if you truly have done a good job of making sure that client knows why you're needed, what kind of things do you help them avoid? What kind of problems do you help sidestep? Right? When they know why you're here and why you're part of this transaction, the money becomes less of an issue. They're willing to pay for things they think they need. They're willing to pay for things that they think will protect them. But are we doing a good enough job explaining to them what kind of problems I solve? For example, I know that you all have encountered this same situation. The buyers think that our job is just to find the house for them. Well, I didn't. I found the house myself. My realtor didn't even find the house for me. I've heard that for years and years and years and years. At my buyer consultations, I make sure that my buyers know. Chances are I'm not even going to be the one that helps you find your house. Chances are you will see it first on Zillow or wherever you're looking. But that's not where my value is, guys. My value is not in helping find the house for you. My value is in helping you structure your offer in the way that gets you what you want. It is backed by data and experience and knowledgeable advice. My value is in helping you navigate the home inspection, knowing which kinds of things to look for, what kinds of things to be repaired and how, what kind of things are common for buyers to ask for. My value is preparing the appraiser with information about the upgrades and the features of the home and how this house compares to other homes in the neighborhood. Making sure that we don't get some fly-by-night appraiser that's never even been to that city who now is going to appraise your house $100,000 too low, because I proactively took steps to make sure that didn't happen. My value is in helping you avoid buying a limit, helping you avoid buying a house that is not sellable to other people. I had a client that used to live under the L in Chicago. The street noise did not bother her at all. But if she lost her job and came to me a year later and asked me to sell that house, would I be able to sell it to everybody else? Probably not. But that was me providing my value and making sure that she stayed focused on an investment and not just the emotional side of the purchase, which is where she likes it, right? Again, I want to be their realtor for life. I want to be invited to their kids' graduations from high school, their baby showers, their weddings, their funerals, unfortunately, right? I want to be a part of their family for life. And the only way I do that is by inserting my value and showing them that they can trust me to guide them. If you just say, if someone asks you, hey, why should I pay you $12,000? If the seller won't, why should I increase my sales price so that you get paid? What is your response to that? Everything that I'm saying to you right now that I just said for the last 3 minutes is what you say. This is why I'm worth it. And you're going to relate it to things that they understand. I'm sorry, y'all, just because you answer the phone does not make you worth $12,000, right? When you give them comparisons like you pay an attorney to defend you if you were accused of a crime, right? You are hiring that attorney to help you because you know what could happen if you don't. If I don't hire an accountant to do my taxes and I do them myself, what could happen is I could get audited. I might owe tens of thousands of dollars because of that audit. And again, I can cut my own bangs, but if I do, what could happen? I could look like a joke for the next 8 weeks to 12 weeks, right? I want you to make it relatable to them so that they understand what is your value. And your value, when all these people keep telling you, you have to keep inserting your value. You have to show them your worth. These are the things that I'm telling you about. What problems do you solve? What problems do you help people avoid? What proactive steps do you take to make things are a smooth transaction and things don't slip through the cracks? Why do they need you? They can find the house on their own. They can find any joker with a lockbox key to let them in. But after that, what is your role? Your role is so much more important than opening a door, y'all. A monkey can open a door. You are hiring me because I can negotiate for you, because if you tell me what you want, I'm going to try to find a way to make that happen. If you tell me what you're afraid of, I'm going to make sure that what you're afraid of doesn't happen. Right? Alan, did you have a question for me? I'm sorry. Or a comment?
No, nothing so far.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. So I need you guys. So Teresa, when you're shaking your head and you're worried about how do I convince them that I'm worth this money, I want you to focus on all the things that could go wrong if you don't have an agent. A seller could take advantage of you, right? The contract that you don't know, you could enter into and not even understand what you're signing and what the legal implications are, right? Maybe I don't read the contract and I don't know in Tennessee that I have to order an appraisal in 14 days. I don't realize I have to get insurance in 14 days. Maybe I'm in danger of losing my earnest money because I didn't follow the timelines, because I didn't hire an agent to stay on top of them. I'm compromising my money. I have some buyers that put down earnest money that are $50,000 and $75,000 checks. If you're writing that much down as your earnest money, you want somebody protecting that money, because you don't know enough as a consumer about what that contract says and when that money is in jeopardy. But I do. That's my value, y'all. Do you understand what I'm saying in terms of how you need to approach this? You guys need to get very good and answer this question very simply. Why should I pay you $12,000 or $15,000, whatever the amount is you decide? Why should I pay that to you? Why are you worth that? And if you cannot answer that question, y'all need to go hang up your license right now and go find a job that pays you. And I don't mean to be ugly when I say that, but I'm going to tell you, people are going to ask you point blank. You're asking me to bump up the price of this house $15,000 so that you can get paid. Tell me or show me why you're worth $15,000. If I know why you're worth it, I don't care about that $5 for every thousand that I'm paying in my payment for that extra $15,000, because I know you saved me from a lawsuit. You guided me. You protected me. You gave me advice that helped me navigate this. That $15,000 is nothing compared to $80,000 you would have overpaid on a house that if you didn't have me, or the repairs that I helped you negotiate, the concessions I got paid on your behalf that I was able to negotiate. What do those add up to? That's why you need me. Y'all good? Do you understand what I'm saying? Can you answer that question? I want you to write down on a piece of paper, why am I worth $15,000 or whatever the amount is you want to put down. Me, I like $30,000 checks. So why am I worth $30,000? If you can't answer that, you need to work on that, y'all, because you're going to get asked. I got asked twice this weekend. And I got to show my son how I answered that question, because he's a brand new licensee. He's never even heard these conversations, right? But you better believe he's prepared now, because someone's going to ask him, why should I pay you $10,000? Why should I pay you $20,000? They think they can do it on their own. If they think they're safe without you, they will. You need to make sure that they understand why you're needed. Okay. Does that help, Teresa, with the head shake a little bit?
It does. It does.
Okay.
And can I say something to Teresa?
Oh
Please.
God, please tell me something comforting.
So I got my license on Valentine's Day, February 14th of 2020, and literally a few weeks later, the entire world shut down. And I'm a brand new agent going, of course the whole world's shutting down as soon as I got my license.
Yes.
And it's just overwhelming and scary, but I promise you, it all ends up working out as you go along, and you have such great leadership with Laura, and so hang in there.
Yeah, it's just annoying. I'm more like Laura. I like systems, like process, I like data, and
Yeah.
I'm more of the frustration part because I have not been able to receive that. I mean, I can't pull it out of my butt. I don't know what I'm pulling at this point in time because I
Right.
don't have that reference point. So
Right.
to me, this whole process of trying to get grasp so you can then speak your value as well as Laura does is where my struggle is. And that's just the aggravation part for me. And it drives me effing crazy because I want to be able to speak that way. And I'm coming out of the education world. So now I can speak that all in the education world on how to help your child, yada, yada. And
Right.
I've been finding that frustration on this end because, like we all know, no one tells you. You're out there and you're left on your own. And it's just so aggravating.
Yeah,
I
that's
want
how
you
it
to
was when
apply.
COVID shut us down. So I feel yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for that, Christy. Thanks for
I might now go
supporting
eat
her.
that chocolate bar then.
Patrice,
I'm so stressed.
I want you to know too, because applies to everybody on the call. I want you to understand I'm so good at what I say because I have the confidence in my abilities. I have the confidence in what I bring to the table. I have the confidence in how I help people.
Now, did
And
that come
did
from
not happen overnight.
That's what I was gonna say. Did that come from experience? That's
That
the
did not, yeah. So
right. That's my problem. It's
well,
aggravating.
here's what I want you to hear me tell you.
Okay.
You can overcome a lack of confidence by working on your competence.
Right. No,
Right?
yeah, that was
So,
key 2
as a
weeks ago.
teacher,
Yes.
I know you know this because I was a classroom teacher too.
Right.
We've all had nightmares where we woke up because in our nightmare we were teaching a class and no one was listening to us. We had no classroom discipline, or I was being evaluated by a principal and I was so nervous. And at the end of the day, when you are a classroom teacher, your confidence in your subject matter is because you know your stuff. You
Right.
know
And
how to
then,
teach it.
but then you had the data, right? So I'd always track it with my data. So what I was teaching effectively, did it come across and showed it in the data, which it always did.
Sure.
So here I'm missing that piece, that element, like you're saying. It's just like, oh my gosh,
You
I'm going
still have
crazy.
data though that I want you to lean on. And that's the point,
Okay.
is that I've worked with most of my clients for about 5 years in my business were Marine Corps fighter pilots, doctors, and lawyers. Those three categories of people are the most fact-finding people
Yes.
I've ever met. They don't care what you say, you got to show it to me, right? So if I showed a buyer who was a Marine Corps fighter pilot or a Marine Corps drill instructor or whatever he was, if I told him, listen, I know what the market's going to bear based on my experience, they didn't care what I had to say. I had to show it to them in black and white. And one of the things that I want you to lean on, and this is what separates a used car salesperson from a skilled person, is lean on the data that you have that says, you don't have to take my word for it. Let me show you the data. And this is especially important, especially when you have a buyer who's trying to write a lowball offer. Like, let's say in your market, most of the sellers in your market, if I were to run stats in your market, and all of the sellers in the last 6 months have gotten a minimum of 98% of their list price. Let's say that's what the data tells you. Your buyer wants to write an offer for 92%, right? Because they just want a deal, because all buyers want a deal, right? I could tell that buyer till I'm blue in the face, hey, I don't think the seller's going to accept your offer.
Right.
But what does that tell the buyer? It tells the buyer I'm not on their team, right? So what I do instead is I will combat that and say, my job is to write whatever you instruct me to write, but I do need to show you the data so that you can make an informed decision about what is the best offer. And then I'm going to show them, if you look at the last 25 sales in this zip code, they all sold for 99% of list price. I had 2 that were outliers that sold for 97, but no one sold for less than 95. So can you tell me why a seller would accept your offer at 92% when I'm showing you the data is telling me that's not what has happened? Now it's not my opinion. Now it's not even my experience. As a newer agent, I don't even have to have the experience. The data tells me what I need to know. But what happens is most agents are not instructed on how to read the data. They're not instructed on how to pull the data from their MLS. But you know who knows? All of your MLS instructors know that program like the forwards and backwards of their hand. And if you do nothing else as part of your competency You have a responsibility to take all of the MLS training that you can from these people that know how to pull data and reports from the system, and then teaching you how to use the reports to leverage your business. But we have a
That would be
responsibility to go learn it,
amazing.
right? We have to go learn it because that's not taught to us like in our brokerages. Usually in some of our brokerages, they're going to teach you like, okay, well, here's how you might set up an auto notify for somebody, but maybe they're not teaching you how to pull data and
No.
statistics. And the data and statistics is what I need you to lean on when you
Yes.
don't have the experience, or when you have a client who's a fact finder who needs to see it in black and white. The problem is when the data doesn't match with what the market is bearing. And sometimes
Correct.
it doesn't catch up that way. And you
True.
still have to show them the data and say, I know that what this is showing you is different than what I'm telling you, but let me tell you where my advice is coming from. And then I'm going to explain to them. I called 25 listing agents, and this is the information. In 30 days, you're going to see it reported as what I'm telling you, but it's not reported yet. Right? I just want you to lean in on data. I
Perfect.
need us all to accept the responsibility that if we are going to insert our value and be worth it, we also have to demonstrate that. We cannot just tell them. We have to show them. And showing them means showing them in black and white. When I'm trying to convince you, and I will always make a joke. You know, I was a single mom of 2 boys for 15 years of my career. And I would always have clients that would say, you're just trying to get me to write a higher offer so that you make more money. I've heard it. How many of you guys have heard that? Right? And my first response, and I always have had a response to it because I heard it from the very get-go, right? That's what people think. Oh, you just want me to spend more so that you make more. And I would explain to them, you know what, y'all? The way that I'm paid, the difference between you offering 400 and 410 is about $27. And I have 2 children, 2 teenage boys that are going to eat more than $27 worth of food today alone. I promise you, the advice I'm giving you is not because I want to make more money. It's because I'm on your team. I only get paid when I sell a house, and you and I together are going to, I want you to be successful. If this is the house you love, I don't want you to be upset that you lost it over $1,000. Would you wake up tomorrow if you found out that you lost this house over $1,000? How would you feel? And sometimes that will guide people back to an offer that's more acceptable. And sometimes I've had to use what I call their sales techniques, but some people call them manipulation. I will say, do you remember when we were looking at the house and your 2 girls were running around in the backyard and how excited they were? Your girls will never have that if you're going to fight me over $1,000 or fight the seller over $1,000. Is that worth it to you? And for some people it is because it's principle. But you have to ask the question, is that worth it to you? Is my $10,000, my fee, whatever that is not being able to pay that fee worth losing this house over it for you? Because I can show you that we can work that $10,000 in, and it might cost you $27 more a month. But I got paid, you got the house you wanted, everybody's happy, right? The seller's happy too. But I want you to lean in on competency, and I want you to lean in on confidence. The confidence comes from knowing it's not about just my skill set that I know I'm a badass. I do know I'm a badass, but I worked really hard to become a badass. I worked and I honed my skill and I absorbed everything I could to, and I practiced a lot. I practice scripts. That's why the words come out of my mouth so easily, is because I spent the time practicing. Okay. And one thing I want you to understand is that it didn't happen overnight, but what I do know is that my clients are better off with me than they are without me. I know that what I bring to the table helps them. I know that it helps them avoid major problems, major expenses, possible litigation, and I am there to protect them. We need to do more of spreading that message than just I open doors. I don't just open doors. That is the and my son even commented, the one who just got the license, even said to me this weekend while we were showing houses, Showing the houses is the easiest thing we did through all of this. They need to know that. I am not just a door opener. What I bring to the table is so much more important than that. But you've got to get good at understanding it yourself so that you can explain it to other people. Okay? You've got
Yes.
this. I want you
Thank
to
you.
apply the same confidence. If I were to ask you anything about your subject matter that you used to teach, you would be able to tell me until you were tired of talking about what you know because you're
At least,
confident.
yeah, you might be tired.
I
I
might be,
just
but
knew.
you would be confident in what you're delivering.
Correct.
Right?
Right. Correct.
You know, and I
Yes.
want you to get the same way about your value in real estate is because when you truly understand that they're better off with you than they are without you, and you understand why you're worth the money, then you will be able to articulate that to other people without hesitation. Okay.
Correct.
But you got to lean into that. Start making your list. Why am I worth $30,000? Not 10, 30. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
You've got this. 30. On the buyer's
Thanks.
side, and I know it's 2:15 already, so we're way past. You are right. We swim in an ocean with no swimming lessons or life jackets. We're just treading water. I love it. My buyer's one is the same. I did give you guys a link to this, so you already have this and the link that I gave to you. I gave you the whole folder. But I want you to do the same thing. I want you to explain to the buyers, ask them what do you know about this lawsuit? They're going to tell you they either know nothing or they're going to say, well, what does this mean for me? And you're going to need to explain to them. There are going to be some sellers who are going to pay my fee. There's some sellers who are going to tell me right up front what my fee is. And there's going to be some other sellers that are going to tell us just to make it part of our offer. You want to also explain to them the pros and cons of each one of those. Okay. I want you to go through the buyer's one and read it for yourself just for time. I did give you my language in all of these. So my knowledge of the local market and negotiation skills, I'm usually going to save you more money than what you would have spent on my commission. I'm helping protect your money. So if your earnest money is $50,000, you better believe I'm worth every bit of that $50,000 because I'm helping protect it. I know the timelines in the contract. I know what things you could risk losing your earnest money over. And I'm going to make sure you don't do those things. I'm going to make sure that your money is protected and safeguarded. Okay. I do want you to discuss payment options with them. There are multiple ways you're going to be able to do that. So read through those examples. I want you to reassure them that you're on their team. Again, if all of your focus and conversation is about your compensation and not about the buyer's goals, is the buyer going to feel like you're on their side? You're looking out for them, or are they going to think that you only care about yourself? Keep that in mind. Are all your conversations with them about your money, or are they about their goals? You're looking for a house that meets this criteria. I think this is exactly what you're looking for. This is in the neighborhood you want to be, the area you want to be. This is the lifestyle that I think you can expect to have. Y'all focus too much on the part that is the least of concern to them. Don't do that. I do want you to offer transparency. I do want you to talk about transparency. I want them to understand that you want to keep them fully informed along the way. And that if they have any questions that they need to let you know, but you want everything to be crystal clear. You want them to know if certain sellers are telling you that they're willing to pay some of your fee, but not all of it. You want them to understand what options they have if your fee is not covered. What does that look like? Are you willing to reduce any of your fee? I will tell you on one of my deals this weekend, we went back and forth on 3 or 4 counter offers. And at the end of the day, we were $2,500 apart. And I decided that I was not going to let the deal fall apart over $2,500. And me and the other agent were willing to kick in some money to make that deal work. You're going to have to be flexible and understand what is your minimum that you're willing to accept. For me, I knew that if this didn't work, she was just going to rent for another 2 years. And so I would have nothing. So I'll give up $2,500 or $1,500 if that meant that I make 20. You've got to decide for yourself what you're willing to do and what your fee is going to be, right? I do want you to explain the benefits to the buyers too, that they also have flexibility with these changes, that the sellers, that this actually could be positive It doesn't mean they have to pay out of pocket. It might mean that you have another term to play with that can help your offer be accepted versus somebody else's. Okay. This is going to be recorded. It was recorded, so it will be reposted for you guys. I would highly encourage you guys to go back through the buyer side because we didn't spend as much time on it. But the big thing I want you to take away from it is when you're meeting with your buyers, I want you to discuss compensation from the very get-go. I want you to explain their options to them about your compensation. I also want you to explain to them that there are lots of options in terms of how you are paid, right? The seller can pay you directly. You guys can split it. You can pay a portion of it. You can roll it into the loan if it would appraise. There are a lot of options that I want you to explain to them. But I also want you to make sure that you are expressing your value to these buyers and making sure that they understand why they need you. Okay. You are not there just to open the doors. Any questions for me or any specific situation you want to ask me about or talk about? It is always, every replay from all of my Thursday classes are always on my YouTube channel, so you can always find them there. There's also a podcast that you guys can listen to. If you just Google Real Success Blueprint, you will find the podcast or the YouTube channel. I am so grateful to you guys for taking the time. I know I'm tired of talking about this. I know y'all are tired of hearing about it. I feel like we've gotten a lot of good direction. There are some frequently asked questions that are posted on NAR's website that will kind of help you. But I want you to know that this is not doom and gloom for our business. We are not being eradicated from our industry. I need you to understand that if you need to get very crystal clear about knowing your worth and your value and explaining it to other people, and people will pay you. I have for 25 years, I've had buyers who honestly, whatever they were buying, maybe it didn't cover what my fee was. And I told the buyer that, listen, my fee is Y. The buyer's only, or the builder's only paying me X. I'm worth the difference and you're going to owe me the difference. And I've been very successful in getting clients to pay that fee because they know what value I bring to the table. You guys have got to get crystal clear about why they need you. And it cannot just be to open the door, find the house, y'all, or you're going to lose. It's not where we make our money. That's not why they need us. They need us for the things they don't do every day, which is the negotiating, knowing what to look for, knowing what to ask for, knowing how to navigate that inspection, proactively taking things in control so that things are not left to chance and now you have to react to everything that goes wrong. Take control of the transaction and control it so that you can be there to sidestep anything that could go wrong. But you guys have got to get really good about explaining to people what you guys do, and it can't just be opening the door. Okay. I'm super thankful you were here today. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Follow me on social media. You'll see the link for it, and I will be sure to post the topic on Monday so that you know what we are talking about. But I want you guys to go out there with confidence, knowing that if this is going to be okay, I want you to understand how to explain it to people in simple terms. Talk about it in a favorable way, not a negative way. Let them know that this offers more flexibility. And it is not just a one shoe fits all, and this is the way we do it. It's all negotiable. So now is when you're really going to sharpen your skills on how to advocate for yourself and how to advocate for your clients. But the first sale you make every day is to yourself. You guys can do this. You are capable of rising above some of the garbage agents that are out there in our industry. And all of that takes is being knowledgeable and taking control over things that you're responsible to know. You owe it to yourself and to your clients to know how your MLS works and what the contracts say and what's happening in your market. And if you don't know, go find out. Okay, separate yourself from the masses. You guys got this. All right, go out and sell something. I'm always here if you need me for anything. But thanks for being here, and I look forward to hearing how you guys navigate these conversations. Okay, y'all take care.
All right. Thank you,
See you
Laura.
later. Thanks for being here.